economics students, it is Wednesday, and we are going to be starting on page 234. So we've started a new chapter. We're in chapter 12, and we're going to page 236. So we're starting with the gross domestic product, and so as I said yesterday, this is basically just the quantity of goods times the prices, which means you can multiply that. And nominal, when they're talking about nominal, that's talking about a recent or a current measure. So basically this measure is broken down into intermediate goods and non-intermediate goods, and or final goods. Final goods and intermediate goods, the only difference is resale. So if it's final sale, you're not selling it again. Intermediate, you are trying to sell it again. That's the only difference between that one. Final, like when they say, like if you were at, I've had this happen at Altered State before. So they have a clearance rack at the back of Altered State. That's always the section I go to because that store is very expensive. So I go to the very back where the sales rack is. Always, that's my first go-to. And then normally there, like if it's been marked down 2 or 3 times, like one time I found a shirt for like 48 cents there. It was in the middle of winter, but it was a cute like summer shirt, and so they had marked it down like 2 or 3 times. And so when I took it to the front, I was like, is this price right? And they're like, yes, but it's a final sale, like you can't bring it back. So final sale means you're not going to be doing anything else with it. Intermediate sale means that they bought it to repurpose it maybe and to sell it again, or just to try to buy it to use for a little while and then they're going to sell it. That's what that means. So household, so the GDP is broken up into 4 groups: household consumption, business, the government, and foreign buyers. So that's what it's all broken. There's 4 categories that's broken up into that it factors in. And so with the household consumption, there is consumer durable goods and consumer non-durable goods. So the durable goods are things I like to call like big purchases. Like when you think of maybe a newly married couple, what they would need to be able to furnish that house that they would want to keep for a very long period of time. So that would last longer than a year. So things like that would be typically a refrigerator, washer, dryer, dishwasher. Those things typically last longer than a year. Non-durable goods, things that do not last longer than a year. I'm trying to think of something that's been out in a year. Things like a lamp might be it. Typically, like a maybe if you have a not really a lamp. I'm trying to think of one. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but things that you wouldn't think of that you would need to buy every single year. So I can't think of like a bigger product that you have to buy every single year, but there are some. So today you're reading from 234 to 236. So I actually went a little bit into tomorrow, so I'm just going to finish it. So this will be your Wednesday and Thursday video. I'm just going to finish out. Because it all just kind of flows together anyway. So it also factors in consumer services. So when you think of consumer services, some of the ones I mentioned were like non-essential business, as they're called right now. So there's essential business and non-essential business. Obviously, some services are essential, like I think that like car repairs, gas stations, all those things, those are services technically, and they're considered essential. But things that aren't would be like, I consider it essential, but it's really not essential to life. But The beauty salon, that is one of them that a lot of women do consider essential, including myself, but they have been closed down because they're not considered essential by the government. Education would be one. That was some things that they mentioned that is added into that. The GPDI is basically all the investments and all the inventories. Some of it was the investments were typically planned, but the inventory was unplanned by businesses. Government spending. Now this is one that's a little bit tricky because we've talked about it before, how our nation's so in debt. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around the amount of money that a nation has and that we're in debt in, especially with having a $2 trillion stimulus package. You would think that we would just have loads of money. I've never even heard of having $2 trillion. But we're billions of dollars in debt. So it's not exactly like you think of like a consumer could spend. It's very different. The highest that the government's ever spending has been was in World War II, and afterwards there was a high bounce back in the economy after World War II because there was pent up consumer need and that they couldn't have. So like we've talked about propaganda before, World War II propaganda and Comprehend, and so they had like meatless Mondays and they had victory gardens and those kinds of things where they rationed their food because they were afraid that there wouldn't be enough, and so they had people ration their food to do their part in the war so that they could feed the soldiers, that way there'd be enough food, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the people who worked in those factories had went off to the war in the draft, so to do their part they just had to ration their food. But when the government had to spend a whole lot of money during that time to be able to keep the American people afloat and keep the soldiers afloat and spend money on the war. War is very expensive, and so just the same way that that happened, we're actually expecting the same thing from our economy. From a lot of economists that I've listened to, they have been saying that there is going to be a bounce back in the economy as soon as it opens back up because there's going to be pent up need, and so consumer spending will go higher. And but I'd say our government spending this year was pretty high in the need to buy a lot of the things that they've had to buy for the coronavirus. And so if you look on page 240, that's where you're ending, there is actually a way to kind of calculate this the GDP to have this estimate, because obviously you couldn't go and add up every single thing that every home family unit has bought. You couldn't calculate that. You couldn't calculate every single thing a business had bought in all of the United States. Like, there's just no way to do it for a whole year. There's just no way. So they have an estimate, and it's basically a little math equation there that you can see. It's GDP equals C plus 1 plus G plus NX. And so the NX stands for net exports. The C stands for the business or the household consumption. The I stands for the investment, and the G obviously stands for the government spending. So then they add all that together and do that little formula, and out comes their number. And that is how it is calculated. So that is all I have for you guys for this week, and the rest of your assignments and things will be listed on teacher pages. And that is all. Have a great weekend.